And yet another EQ, cutting out some of that sort of boxiness, cardboardiness here, and some more top end because, hey, yeah, why not? Apparently I felt like it needed it. Let's hear it. Yeah, I think it needed it. Let's show you the before and after. This is how hard I had to work on the snare. Quite a difference, right? Could I achieve the same quality mix for my latest song using only stock plugins? Now, this is the first time I've done anything like this, and to be honest, I did find it very difficult, but there were some huge surprises along the way, mainly thanks to this guy, and in particular, this little setting here with the clip, and that's Logic's stock compressor. So I'd like to say a quick thank you to everyone who suggested I do this video on stock and free plugins, and I'm always up for getting video suggestions, so please don't hesitate to hit me up if you have any. Okay, so this is the version that got released on all streaming platforms. This song is called Never Stood a Chance, and it's by Long Live, which is my artist name.
Because everything will always come after my misery. I swear I tried to push you first, but you never stood a chance. No, you never stood a chance.
And just quickly, if you make music like this and you'd like me to mix your next release, then head over to terrybeckleyrecording.com, message me in the contact form, and I will get back to you. Okay, so in this session here, what I've done is I've muted all the original stuff so we can compare, and then I've got like the stock version where I've mixed it with stock plugins. I haven't necessarily tried to emulate exactly what I did with the sort of premium plugins, but I just tried to get it I just tried to mix it from scratch effectively. So let's have a little listen to the instrumental mix with the stock plugins. So I was quite amazed at how the kick managed to come out, and that is a lot of that sound is from the actual stock compressor here. And whilst trying to mix this with stock plugins, instantly I came across a problem, because I love using saturation on things to sort of bed them into the mix. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll see that I use Saturn 2 religiously, like all the time, or I use the Waves non-linear summer saturation. I especially love this on drums with its sort of transient heavy, the nature of drums being very transient heavy, and it can really help things or stop things from sort of poking out or sticking out of the mix. Within Logic, there just isn't a stock plugin that does saturation, just saturation. So while I was mixing the kick, I was having trouble. I was just trying to get the saturation out of just driving the compressor. And I was completely ignoring this over here because it's not on the Waves one, so I just wasn't looking at that section of the plugin. So I'll take you through what I did, and then I'll show you how turning that clipping setting on just did so much. So this is the kick sounds by themselves before I mixed anything. So obviously sample kick sounds, you know, there's no problems as such that you have to sort of get around. So I brought this EQ in here, slight roller for the low end, slight dip here at sort of build up. There was a bit of like a low mid build up, and it also made a little bit of space for the bass. That's why it's only a small one and it's quite narrow. But then I want to bring in this compressor here. I did what I always do, which is make, you know, slow attack on it, fast release on it. Helpful in this plugin is that you've actually got the milliseconds on here, because in the 1176 on the Waves, the dials feel backwards. So it's nice to actually have it explained from Logic. That was a nice touch. If I turn this distortion off, this is what I had by a sort of 4:1 ratio, turn the makeup gain off, slowest attack, fastest release. And if you play that, and let's bring in the whole mix, and hopefully you can hear how it kind of sticks out. Something's not quite gelling. It sounds fine, and it just doesn't quite have that. I can hear that the saturation is missing. So let me turn the clipper on, and you can see what it does. it just does so much for the attack. Like it sounds great. And I'm probably going to use this in my mixes going forward. I don't think I want to miss out on it. I haven't even paid for it. It's crazy. Let's hear that off and on one more time. So off. Yeah, it's got some punch. And that's what the slow attack and the fast release, it gets that transient out. And then the clip with the saturation gives it that punch. That, of course, is a kick bus, and there isn't actually any mixing going on here. And then we did finish it off with this multi-presser from Logic, which is a multi-band compressor. These 3 bands are bypassed. This is just to control the double kick parts to make sure that when there's lots of double kick, that the bass doesn't build up. So if we play the bridge, there's a bit in the bridge here where that happens. Yeah, you can see that my mix doesn't fall apart too much when that happens. Okay, and another thing I like to do, if you look at my premium one here, so I've got EQs, compressors, more EQ, the C4, which is basically what we just emulated with that multi-presser. And then we've got R bass here, which allows it to still sound thick on small speakers. So it's set to sort of 52 hertz, and that adds like upper harmonics to it. So we didn't have that, so I had to emulate this without that plugin. Basically want to distort those sort of lower frequencies in it, but it was tricky in Logic to distort just that sort of 50 hertz area. So what I had to do, as you can see here, I've sent it out to a bus called R bass, and then I have cut everything out with EQ. So we're just getting this bit here, and then I used the distortion plugin there. So let's see if this is going to be mega subtle. So I don't know if you're going to be able to tell. Maybe if you're on small speakers, you'll be able to tell. But I will take it out and bring it in. So yeah, subtle as, but it's important for those small speaker situations to make sure the kick doesn't start to sound clicky and too thin. Okay, so snare I probably wasted the most time on. This was the hardest thing to mix with stock plugins. What I normally do, I start with saturation, normally, to tame those sort of really clear and obvious, sort of that it's digital snare transient, into some Pro Q3, which is just rolling off and then controlling the sort of sneeze area of the snare. There, too much of that sounds sneezy. Waves compressor, SSL from Waves, doing my EQ some more, like the boosting part of it. Then actually I've always used the stock distortion and then the transient designer, so I can't touch any of that stuff for this. What we did instead, same compressor as the kick, same settings pretty much, yeah, so same attack and release settings. No, it's the same settings, and then this magical clip guy, definitely needed him. And that clip is replacing what the Saturn does on the other plugin. So FabFilter Saturn, over £100. I think it's even more expensive than that, actually. I think it was closer to 150, maybe even 200. I mean, I wouldn't have paid that. I would have waited for a sale, but you know. Logic compressor, free, or included with Logic. Okay, next I tried to get some analog EQs in there. This is the Pultec EQ emulation that comes free with Logic, and that is to get some of that to open the snare up, because it's really sort of like dull sounding. It definitely needs some presence. So that's why on here I made the bandwidth as wide as I could. Otherwise it was too pokey, like it was too sharp of a boost. If you use the boost and attenuation controls together, you can get quite a smooth top end that you boost quite high to actually be able to hear it, to actually get it to work. But it's quite smooth if you use the attenuation as well. Sure, loads of you have probably used Pultec EQs or emulations. And then on here, which is pretty cool, is you have this like saturation bit here, which I set to punchy, gave it a little bit of drive. And this is I found with these Logic EQs that I can add in the saturation that I would normally be using from the Saturn or something like that. So down here, I'm cutting out 700. That's probably where there's like a honky ring, and then boosting the sort of 200. The classic sort of weight of the snare is around 200. Slight boost there. So let's hear this off and on. So it's starting to get a little brighter, but of course it wasn't doable with just those plugins, so I've done more here. So got rid of a bit of a ring I didn't like, or some honk, bit of that sort of like sound at 4K, and then I've boosted some more presence here with this EQ, so let's hear that. There we go, much nicer, much more life in it now. And let me show you the bits I took out. On Pro Q3, you can solo what you've done, but you can't really do that on here, so all I can do is sort of take these cuts out and you can hear what I was removing. And then the 4K one. So that's sort of like, there's like a ratty sort of ness to the attack of the snare there. And that's taming. If you listen to the attack, there's like a horrible frequency there that I'm just getting rid of, and it makes that top end boost. I can go further with it. It's much nicer without that in there. And then the old Logic distortion, which is great. Where I've got distortion happening on various other plugins adding up, I've only gone for 2 decibels of drive. Normally I think I set it to around 3. So yeah, you can see how we're getting much more life into that snare. Look, if I take it down to just that compressor we had at the beginning, in the first EQ, listen to the difference. Sort of announces itself, the snare, when we've got them in there. So another compressor, doing what I have to do. Again, we are slowest attack, fastest release to really bring the punch of the snare out. And what's good about Logic and these compressors is they're all lined up here at the top. So you can set your settings and you can flick through each one and hear what each compressor is doing. It's quite educational also. So I landed on this VCA compressor because it just gave it what I wanted, which is this. Bit more life. I think, like I said, I struggled with the snare. It took a while. I think to get it to sound as lively and punchy as I like it to normally, I've sort of had to do it in bits. I took each plugin as far as it could go, and if I couldn't go any further without it getting worse, I'd just do another compressor or another bit of distortion or another EQ. And when you're not paying for the plugins, it's fair enough, right? And you got to commend Logic for how good those compressors are. So this is a single EQ here. I didn't want the graph to influence me, so I stuck this on parametric. I knew something wasn't right. I wanted to take it out, but I didn't want the graph on what I'd already EQ'd to factor into it. So I did it by ear completely, and this is what I was taking out. It's not that obvious, but I think once I'd got the whole mix going, you hear it a lot of times and you start to pick those things out. And yet another EQ, cutting out some of that sort of boxiness, cardboardiness here, and some more top end because, hey, why not? Apparently I felt like it needed it. Let's hear it. Yeah, I think it needed it. Let's show you the before and after. This is how hard I had to work on the snare. quite a difference, right? You might argue, why didn't I just pick better samples? You're probably right. This was an experiment. This was a training exercise, so that's my excuse there. Okay, toms, again, just mixing the actual bus itself, just EQ. So cutting out the low end, giving the toms some presence. I heard a top mixer say on a tutorial that toms should be as bright as the snare. Otherwise, they're going to sound dull because they usually follow snares, with the fills and stuff. And it's probably the best tom mixing advice I ever had. So that's why we've gone for this presence boost up here. This is obviously tricky with real toms. If you are using real toms that aren't samples, I've got some videos on mixing live drums or real drums. There's some pretty cool tom mixing tips there. So you can go back and watch those videos. I'll stick that in the description. So toms are sort of hard because they only happen so often. I can play you this bit here. See if we can get some before and after. See if you can see what it's doing. So without. And now with. That's kind of a hard thing to show you because I've got this sort of distorted drum track happening there for that section of the song. So that was kind of a dumb bit to show. That's why the middle one sounds weird. Let's do this instead. This one might be a better one. So without. And with. Just a bit tighter, a bit more present. Matching the brightness of the snare. Hi-hats and rides. Pick the samples. That's just literally rolling off low end. Won't bore you with that. Overheads. Soothe. Replacing Soothe with stock plugins, not a fun job to do because Soothe is just really good. So what we did instead was I compressed them. Wasn't doing that the first time, but I think they probably needed a bit more life in them, and then EQ'd out the nastiness. It's not that fun when you don't have like dynamic EQs and things like Soothe, which will only work on those frequencies when they need to. So this is sort of a bit more old school where you pull it out and it stays out for most of the song. So let's have a listen here so you can see how hard this was. So it was about relaxing the cymbals in your ears, because once that starts to go through mastering, that's going to get pretty nasty. Let's try it with both plugins off and on. Kind of subtle, but why don't we hear it with the original overheads, and we'll swap over to those ones. See, that's why Soothe is great, because I can still have very present cymbals without the nastiness. As you can see with the stock ones, the compressor is probably there because those EQ cuts are dulling them down a little bit. So it's slightly duller, but I don't think it matters enough to pay 200 and whatever quid it was for Soothe. But Soothe is great, and it works on so many things. So I'm not trying to. It's definitely worth the money, but in this instance, this is fine for free. So yeah, let's look at we've got shell room tracks and cymbal room tracks here, which I would have exported out of the drum plugin separately. So what I normally do, Valhalla Room, Music Club this time, the Music Club preset, and then EQ the reverb, or EQ them afterwards. And if you see my other videos, I like to sort of tuck the top end underneath the overheads, so you get this area more, and then you distort the rooms and get quite a cool vibe out of it. And then you obviously have to control these bits because they go crazy when they start getting distorted. So what I did instead was the chroma verb, and I was really pleased. Chroma verb, I open it up on this set. This is literally how when you open the plugin, this is what you get. And I did this on a few things in the mix, haven't touched it, maybe touched the wet knob a little bit, but haven't touched it because fair play to this default setting. And then I would have EQ'd it afterwards, kind of similar actually to the Fab Filter EQ on the what I would have done. Tucking the top end underneath the overhead track and then bringing this out so that I can actually get a bit more rough with it later on. So let's hear the chrome reverb, shall we? Yeah, you know, it's a reverb. When everything's in, it's a nice sounding reverb. Okay, so the far away one, you can see I got a bit rougher with here. Got all of the attack out of it with the same sort of slow attack, fast release. Settled on the opto compressor here, limiter on. And my favorite little setting here, the clip, is on there as well. We're trying to trash this one up. Distortion 2. Only a little bit of drive because we're already smashing it with the compressor, darkening it a little bit with the tone, and I probably brought this pre-gain down a little bit. And then EQ, pulling out nearly everything apart from, for some reason, this. But I guess we did it as we needed it, and that's what we ended up with. So before and after. Okay, let's turn this up for demonstration purposes. So before, that reverb is obviously on the samples, on the actual room sample itself. After, it's really getting some transient out of it, really getting some life into it. The two of them together. I should bring this back to minus whatever it was, 7 something. And then cymbal room, nothing. But the cymbal rooms come out of a plugin called Drumforge, and their cymbals sound really good. I haven't found a drum sampler, drum plugin with better sounding cymbals than that. So all of these run into this room bus, which is the stock version, and more EQ, pulling out the problems when they're all together. And compression, went for the VCA here, 2-to-1. This is like a bus compressor, I suppose. And my clips on there again, because as you can tell, I really enjoyed that. So let's hear the rooms all together. Yeah, if you play the drums and I'll mute the room track, you'll see what sort of glue is happening from that and sort of vibe. Yeah, sort of. It's subtle, but it's important to rock your rooms as sort of hard as you can without going insane. So then we have the drum bus, tube EQ, which is the Pultec again. Nothing is happening apart from some drive here on the smooth setting. That's just to emulate like the probably Saturn or something. Or it would have been some kind of tape saturation. Oh, that's what it was. The non-linear summer from Waves on the mic setting, which always goes on my drum buses. And then the Townhouse is what I would have used. I love that as a bus compressor. So I was kind of sad I couldn't use it. But you know, this did okay. 2-to-1 ratio. Again, bringing out some transient, auto gain off. I've only gone for soft. Look at that. I didn't go for clip this time. Yeah, we can hear that. Yeah, it's quite a big difference. It's quite impressed with the drive on these plugins here. You could definitely get yourself used to what saturation does before you then go and splash out on a plugin like Saturn. Remember, if you make music like this, pop punk, emo, that kind of thing, and you want me to mix your next song, head over to terrybeckleyrecording.com, fill out the contact form, and I will get back to you. The link is in the description. Also, if you have Logic and you want me to save these presets, these channel strip presets, I'm more than happy to do so. Let me know in the comments if that's something that would be helpful, and I will eventually get around to doing it. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you at the next one.